Right, excellent. So it's great to be back together, isn't it? And to be able to sing and to do things. Who'd have thought we'd manage 3 Sundays outside? It's rather ironic. I'm speaking about faith in God today, and when I arrived this morning, it was actually raining. And Nigel and Steve and I were there thinking, are we going outside or are we staying inside? And the weather app said we might get away with it. Look at it, it's gorgeous, isn't it? So good to get together, although I have to say I really did enjoy speaking online. I managed to find a teleprompter app. I could put my talk into it, and as it scrolled up the screen I read it off, and the iPad recorded me speaking. I thought it really worked well. You may have thought otherwise, but yeah, I did enjoy that. So anyway, today I'm afraid you're relying on my notes and my memory, and we'll see how we get on. So Stephen's put together this series on resting and trusting in God. 2 weeks ago he kicked off talking about resting in God and the Sabbath, and the fact that it's not just doing nothing and kicking back and watching your favourite box set, but it's about refreshment and rejuvenation, and how recently he has found meditating on the goodness of God, thinking about the birth of Jesus, are things that have helped him. And then last week Rosie was talking about trusting in God and looked at the life of Abraham, and I thought I had a brilliant phrase at the end: when we trust and obey God, we are where the good things happen, or the good things are. So today, as I've said, we're talking about faith in God. Again, I am indebted, as Rosie said last week, to the notes that Stephen's put together. I put together the series over Easter on celebrating Jesus the King, and John and Dave and Rosie had a phone call from me. They agreed to speak. They were told the title. I gave them a couple of sentences and they were left to it. So guys, I apologise, but I will do better next time. But Stephen's done really well. He's put together these great notes, and he suggested we looked at the story of Elisha, because it tells us a lot about faith. So, can anyone tell me anything about Elisha? Yes, Isabel. He was good friends with Elijah, yes. Toby? That was Elijah, but he was there when it happened. Marion, I think you know your hand. He did miracles, yes, Pam. I think you'll find that was actually Elijah, but yes. Yeah, the double portion, yeah, we'll come on to that. Anyone else? Yes, Helen. He received Elijah's mantle, yes, that's right. Any other thing? He did, you're right, yeah, we'll come on to that, yeah, we did that. The other interesting thing is we know that he was born. Well, I thought it was, anyway. Toby and Chris and John, you may want to watch this, because some young men took fun of the fact that he was bald, so he cursed them and a bear came out and mauled them. Well, that's one of those stories in the Bible you never seem to do. So Carol, kids' story next week. Right, so we're going to be looking at Elisha. I am sure, because I'm going to have to talk about Elijah as well, I'm going to mix those names up. So keep me on the toes. Do shout out when you think I've got them the wrong way round. It's easily done. So you'll remember that Elijah, got it ready, that Elijah ended up in a cave. God came to him in a still small voice, and at the end of Elijah pouring out his heart to God, God actually said, "Go." One of the things he said to him was, "Go and appoint Elisha as your successor." So in 1 Kings 19, Elijah finds Elisha ploughing the field. Elisha was obviously from a wealthy family. There were 12 yoke of oxen. He was driving the last pair. And Elijah puts his cloak around Elisha, and that signified that he was to be Elijah's successor. And Elisha actually says to Elijah, can I go and kiss my mother and father goodbye, and then I will follow you? And that's got echoes, hasn't it? Because in Luke 9, Jesus called somebody to follow him, and the person said, "Let me bury my mother and father, and then I will follow you." And Jesus was quite dismissive then. He said, "Let the dead bury themselves." And basically what that person was saying that Jesus had called was, let me go back to my ordinary life. Sometime in the future, after my parents have died and I've buried them, then I will choose to follow you. So so that's what happened in that case where the person was called by Jesus. They were really saying, I'm going to carry on my ordinary life, and at some point in the future, I will choose to follow you. But Elisha wasn't like that, was he? He went and kissed his parents goodbye. He came back. He sacrificed the oxen that he'd been driving, so he killed them. He used the plough that they'd been pulling as the fuel for the sacrifice. So he was committing himself wholeheartedly to the call of God on his life. He was breaking with the past, and he was saying, I am going for this. And so he then followed Elijah. It says in the NIV that he became his servant. In other versions it talks about him becoming his attendant. If you read the story of Elisha, there's a point where some of the kings are saying, who can we consult so we understand what God's will is in this case? And somebody actually says, let's go talk to Elisha because he used to pour water over Elijah's hands. And that word servant or attendant is the same word that's used to describe Joshua and Moses' relationship. So Elijah committed himself wholeheartedly to following God, the call of God in his life. If we fast forward to 2 Kings 2, Elijah is about to be taken up into heaven. And at that time there were these communities of prophets at Gilgal and at Bethel and at Jericho. And so Elijah is visiting these communities as part of saying goodbye to them as he's about to depart. So on 3 occasions Elijah says to Elisha, you stay here, I'm going to go on. And Elisha says, no, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I am going to stay with you. And I don't know about you, I know if it was me, if I'd been serving Elijah and had been doing that, I think I would have taken notice of what Elijah said. And I would probably said, oh yeah, okay, I'll stay here and you carry on. But Elisha knew differently. He realised what was happening. If you, in the story, it says a couple of times when they visited the communities of prophets, the prophets actually took Elisha to one side and said, you know your master's going to leave you today. And he said, yes, I know, don't talk about this. And so Elisha was aware that day was something special, that he needed to press through, that he needed to step up, that he wasn't called to have faith in Elijah and do what Elijah said. He was called to have faith in God, and he needed to follow what God was saying. So he stayed with Elijah, and so they cross over the River Jordan, and it's just the two of them. And Elijah said to him, what is it that you want? And Elisha said, I would like a double portion of your spirit. And biblical scholars will tell you, if you read the narrative, that Elisha did twice as many miracles as Elijah. But Elisha wasn't asking for a ministry that was twice as effective as Elijah's. He was harking back to Deuteronomy, where when children inherited their from their parents and the parents died, the firstborn receives the double portion. So Toby and Sophie, I'm lucky. Isabella, well done. So Elijah wasn't saying, I want a more effective ministry. He was saying, as your successor, Elisha was saying, as your successor, Elijah, I want to be recognised as that inheritor of the firstborn's portion, the double portion. And then if we go further on into the story, we come to the story of this wife, who's now a widow, She was married to one of the prophets who were part of the community of prophets, and her husband's died, and he's left some debts, and the creditor has come to the widow and said, pay up, or I'm going to take your sons into slavery. And according to the law of Moses, you were allowed to pay off debts by going into servitude. And but by this time, that law was being abused, because you were supposed to be treated as a hired hand if you did that. But here was somebody who was saying, I'm going to take your sons and they're going to become my slaves to pay off the debt. And the widow says that her husband was somebody who revered the Lord. And I can imagine that if the husband revered the Lord, then the whole household revered the Lord. We get Joshua talking about, as for me and my household, we will honour the Lord. And so here is a family who have revered the Lord, who have followed the Lord to the best of their ability, and life has knocked them back. And they're suddenly at a point where the widow is facing being destitute. There's no pension, there's no social security. The sons would be there to support her in their old age, but they're going to become slaves. It would be easy to lose hope and to abandon following God. And yet she comes to Elisha, and Elisha says, how do you want me to help? What have you got? And she said, well, I haven't got anything except this little jar of oil. And so Elisha says, well, go and collect as many pots as you can. Don't collect a few. And so she goes off and they collect the pots. How would you feel if you were in that widow's situation? You're a household that had followed God faithfully, suddenly, through no fault of your own life, had sort of tripped you in the teeth. Would you have been willing to go around all your neighbours and say, right, I'm going to give me all your empty pots, please, I need them, Elisha's just told me. Or would you say, well, I've only got this little pot of oil, I'll get a few and we'll see what happens. But they get all these pots, and then they start pouring the oil. And the oil keeps pouring, it keeps flowing, until every pot is full, and it's the last pot is filled to the brim. The oil stops flowing. And the widow has enough jars of oil, and she can sell them, she can pay off the debt, she can live on the rest. Her sons don't need to go into slavery. And by holding on to our hope in God, He has been faithful, and with the help of Elijah, she's seen an amazing miracle. Last time Rosie was talking about the fact that when we trust and obey God, it's where the good things happen, where the good things are. And she mentioned from Psalm 23 that we'll be led in green pastures by still waters. We'll have that banqueting table laid out in front of us in the presence of our enemies. And thinking about it, I thought, well, the faith in God is what allows us to walk through the darkest valley and fear no evil, and know that God is with us, that Jesus is with us, and know that His rod and His staff comfort us. James talks about the fact that we should consider it pure joy whenever we face trials, because the testing of our faith produces perseverance, and perseverance produces maturity. So faith in God is about committing wholeheartedly to God. It's about pressing through and following that call and pressing through on it. And it's about not losing hope when life knocks us back, but keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you that you are a faithful God. That you love us in a way that we just cannot fully understand. And I thank you that no matter what situations we face, and where we are in life, you are there beside us, walking alongside us. And I pray that we will look for you. We will look for your presence. We will commit wholeheartedly to following you. Where we need to, we will press through. When life becomes difficult and situations cause problems, that we will keep our eyes fixed on you and know that you are with us. Thank you for your love and your faithfulness. Amen.